Hello and welcome to our lipids lecture. You know a lot about lipids already. First of all, you know that they are organic molecules. That means they contain carbon. And what we're going to find out soon is that they contain the same atoms as carbohydrates, but just structured differently. It's fascinating. Also, you know that lipids are macronutrients. We consume them in larger quantities than our micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals. You also know they're energy yielding. They pack quite a punch, 9 calories per gram versus our proteins and carbs, which come in at 4 calories per gram. We're going to find out that energy source is important for our bodies and how that can be. We'll also find out that they're essential. There are essential components to our lipids, the essential fatty acids, and right now I'm really interested in the research coming out on essential fatty acids and prevention of depression or alleviation of depression. I find food and mood very fascinating. So lots coming out in terms of lipids and their benefits to our bodies. We used to, wow, back in the 70s and 80s, we were a little bit of a fat phobic society, and that has changed, thankfully. So we'll explore where we've come in terms of our journey around fats. Just a quick note, lipids is a broad category, almost like an umbrella, where fats and oils are under that umbrella. And the difference between fats and oils is whether they're solid or liquid at room temperature. So we would consider a fat solid at room temperature and oil liquid. Just to clarify that, but I don't get picky about that. We don't really use lipids in general society talk, so fats is fine. I get it, and it's all good. We're going to talk about 3 different kinds of lipids. You're going to explore triglycerides, you're going to explore sterols, okay, and that includes both the animal ring-like structure fat, cholesterol, or the plant-based ring-like structure called phytosterols. We're going to find out these plant phytosterols are excellent when used as a substitute in different kinds of vegetable spreads. And then we're going to talk about amazing phospholipids. So you're going to explore all 3. The reason lipids are important is because they do so much for our bodies. We need fats. We need fats to consume. We need fat on our body. And there's some reasons why, and we will explore that, as well as you're going to learn that lipids are important in foods. We need a little bit of fat in food because it carries our nutrients. There are fat-soluble vitamins, and we need that fat as a carrier, as well as you gotta love them. Okay, all I'm thinking about right now is bacon. Not a good idea, but flavor, texture, aroma, and what that is it gives us just taste. Oh, we love it. Palatability. We love when things taste good. And if you remember, the number one reason why we eat what we eat is why? Because of taste. So fats make foods taste good, and they also provide a sense of fullness. They provide a satisfaction that happens after we eat them. Now, when we talk about lipids in foods, okay, so I want you to think about your food groups from my plate. And of course, the fats and oils are going to contain most of the lipids, but also in different food groups, we can find fats and oils. We can find in dairy. We can find full fat dairy versus no fat dairy. You've probably seen those labels. This is where you want to read your labels. And what I find most interesting is if you're hanging out, where can you hang out? Hang out in the cottage cheese and the sour cream section. I'll find you there because you know me, I spend more time reading labels in the grocery store than shopping. So find me in that section, and I want you to get a non-fat cottage cheese, and I want you to get a full fat cottage cheese. Just get those 2 containers. I want you to turn them around, and I want you to look at the ingredients. And the thing is that, yeah, we could give up some of the calories by removing the fat, but you know what? No one will buy it because it tastes bad. Because remember, fat provides palatability. It provides mouthfeel. And what you're going to find in that non-fat cottage cheese is a lot of fillers. You're going to find a lot of other ingredients that'll help to replace the mouthfeel, the palatability that fat does. So, you know, between a 4% cottage cheese, a 2% cottage cheese, a non-fat, fat-free cottage cheese, you're going to see a difference in ingredients where, the 2% and the full fat it'll say cream and salt and maybe some enzymes. But then in the non-fat, you're going to see all these different types of fillers and starches and things to emulate fats. And you got to kind of make the decision. Is it worth a few extra calories to have less of these ingredients? I don't know. Again, it's, looking and weighing the pros and cons and the benefits and the costs. So I just wanted you to think about that. So dairy, in terms of dairy comes in different ranges. The nutrient package is the same. It's just that the fat quantity is different. Okay, so full fat milk, whole milk, has the same vitamins and minerals and protein content that non-fat milk has. The only thing that's different or changed has been the fat content. We look at our protein foods. I'm just thinking right now about a big old steak, with that beautiful marbling and that fat on it. Okay, so we'll look at, in protein foods, there's a lot of different fat, the spectrum of fat. I mean, when we're looking at fish, chicken, beef, I mean, there's a wide variety of fat contents, and we'll look at that. Also, higher protein foods such as nuts and seeds, they contain fat and oils. And looking at fruits and vegetables, you might first not think that fruits and vegetables contain any oils, but look at things such as avocados, think about olives, think about coconuts. And even when we look at apples and bananas, they have a small amount of fat, but not enough to really consider them a higher fat food. Like a banana has 0.39 grams of fat. And again, what's that fat for? It's to help carry some of those fat soluble phytochemicals, antioxidants, and vitamins. All right. And then when we look at grains, grains contain a very small amount of fats, but they still do contain fats. And again, that's to help support some of the carrying of those other additional nutrients. So, again, when we look at our foods and what we consume, fats and oils, and remember, fats and oils, it's not just olive oil, it's not just lard, it's not just, it could be mayonnaise, okay? It could be salad dressings, okay? It could be margarine, that kind of fun stuff. And one last thing I forgot to tell you about protein foods, I just want to put in eggs there. Okay, so eggs have been, the darlings and the demons of the food, of the nutrition world. Gosh, I never know if eggs are in or out with my clients. So I always want to let you know that eggs do contain fats, and we'll learn more about that in our textbook as to whether they're healthy or not healthy. And fats are fat. I mean, eggs are fabulous foods. I guess I kind of ruined that, huh? All right. So lipids and their function in foods and where they are found in foods, really important. Predominantly 95% of fat found in food in the body is in the form of triglycerides. So we'll spend most of our time talking about triglycerides. Structurally, these triglycerides are kind of fun. They got tails. They're not rings. They got tails. And so what we're going to be talking about, so important, are the fatty acids and how the fatty acids are structured, because fatty acids have different types of chain lengths, different types of bonding, and these all have important qualities to what they bring to the food and the fat. So you can look at the length of carbon chains with the fatty acids. You can look at the bonding and the degree of saturation. And so you'll learn all about this in our textbook. It'll go into thorough detail. And don't get too worried about the chemistry aspect of it. I mean, you can geek out on it if you want, but just understand that when it comes to triglycerides, when it comes to triglycerides in foods, we look at these chains, we look at how they're configured, their length, their bonding, and that will then drive the different types of qualities in our food. And most foods are not one or the other, they're a mixture. So they have a mixture of different chains, of different tails. And, you can I'm looking at olive oil, which is in the second grouping, okay, looking at olive oil, you can see that the purple is a saturated fat, the yellow is a monounsaturated fat, and the blue is a polyunsaturated fat. And so I want you to understand that olive oil does contain some saturated fats. Okay. And again, it's not one or the other. There's, don't make it a polarity. It's a spectrum. And so we can look at different different oils and their different properties. They contain mixed types of tails, and again, we'll look at the predominance, but again, nothing is black and white in nutrition. It's a definitely a spectrum. And then when we look at the food history and how, I mean, the food industry and how we've looked at fats, what I want to talk about is the fact that what consumers want and how we get it isn't always the healthiest option. And so in the food industry, we have manipulated fats to develop a crisp, crunchy shelf life texture and shelf life. And so that has unfortunately led us to trans fats. And so we'll talk about the history of trans fats and where you can find them in the diet. I think we have done a great job, though, in terms of removing trans fats. And we'll talk about the effects physically of trans fats on the body and why we have removed them from our food supply, and it's a good thing. So they're not as they were really in the news maybe 10 years ago, maybe more than that. No, I'd say 8 to 10 years ago. So I don't know if you remember those, but you know, they're pretty much removed just because consumer backlash, which is a good thing, that as consumers we can change industry. And then we're going to talk about the omega-3 fatty acids, these essential fatty acids, and we're going to talk about where you can get them, the benefit in the body, some of the strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we can recommend eating fish, and then we also have to then look at sustainability. We have to look at mercury poisoning. I mean, so again, you know, I can help you. I can recommend to you eating fish, but yet for certain populations, too much fish or what kind of fish, it could have an effect. So that's something to think about. And we'll look at how plant-based essential acids may not be absorbed and utilized by the body the same as fish oils. So we'll look at that controversy. And then the last thing I want to say about essential fatty acids is I love the fact that you can get eggs. So the next time you're in the egg aisle, look at the cartons, and there might be some that say high in omega-3 fatty acids. And that's not because eggs are naturally high. It's because if we feed chicken, okay, the beautiful chicken, if we feed her some diets rich in fatty acids, then she will lay eggs that are rich in fatty acids. So just to take a look at that the next time you're in the egg aisle, I think that's fascinating. And another way, if you're not a fish eater, to get some fatty acids. And then it's really important for us to talk about digestion. The digestion and absorption of fat is very different than the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates and proteins. And this is really where we're going to start bringing in things like the gallbladder. And we're going to be talking about bile and how important bile is to emulsify fats, because, you know, fat and you know, water don't mix very well. So we need some emulsification, something to allow us to drive fats through the system. Okay, so we will be using bile from our gallbladder as we are going through the digestive system, and then as we circulate fats through the bloodstream, you know, we got to think about that, okay? And that's where we will be talking about lipoproteins and the transport of lipids through the bloodstream. And again, this is a very important effect on health and well-being, you know, in terms of how these fats are circulating through our body. We have the LDLs, the HDLs, so we have the good fat, the good transporters, the bad transporters. I hate saying things are good or bad, but you know, the lipoproteins that carry fat from the digestive system through the blood system, and then also the carriers that will almost scavenge, pick up, almost sweep through and get any remaining bits and pieces. So you'll learn all about lipid transportation. It's fascinating, and I think it'll shed light on, you know, if you ever get an analysis of your lipid profile from your blood work, it'll help you to put that in perspective of what's going on, where, and how it all works. So again, this is where phospholipids come in. This is where we understand that fats can't just travel freely in the blood, they need a carrier. And so we do a protein carrier and a phospholipid carrier. So it's fascinating. You'll love learning about how the digestion of fats, the absorption of fats, the transport of fats is very unique in terms of as compared to carbohydrates and proteins. And then we'll look at the negative health effects of lipids. Okay, so looking at the fact that, you know, too much fat can lead to too much weight just because they carry 9 calories per gram. But also, you know, as they transport through the bodies, you know, if there's any kind of a buildup, you know, if fat gets stuck in our arteries or our veins, etc. So, how that atherosclerosis, how that hardening, how that plaque formation can lead to challenges with the cardiovascular system. And then we'll look at lipid recommendations in terms of you can look at your Diet and Wellness Plus reports and look at where you are in terms of the current recommendations. And then you can also, look at different dietary approaches. We have higher fat, higher lipid diet approaches such as the keto diet, etc. And we'll be exploring more of that in our unit. Okay, so lots to think about with lipids. It's a little bit daunting, but I think they're fascinating. And, we've really, again, changed our mindset on lipids and their importance in our body. And I think it's a great thing. So we'll review that controversy as well. All right, take care. And I hope this was helpful.